With this feeling, I can leave. I'm working and I'm dreaming. Will you dare to give it all up and walk by my side? Do you see the road? Do you hear it's cold?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Bainbridge, your host, and this is the State of the Nation. And today I am with Daniel Reurich, and we are delivering to you the Energy Report. That's right, the Energy Report. So let's go and say hello to Daniel. How you going there, Daniel?
Hi, Jason. Nice to be with you again. Having a pretty good day, actually.
Oh, I haven't seen you for ages. That was a very funny sort of statement that a friend of mine used to say when I was living in China. He's actually one of my best Chinese friends. He was a really funny guy. Dressed in a three-piece suit all the time, had this little Gucci man bag walking around. And he had this perfect British accent. And every time he saw me, he used to say, "Oh, I haven't seen you for ages." Very good. We're having a little bit of fun this morning. It's early in the morning. We've got a really interesting video to take a look at a little bit later on with Shell and their antics and what they're getting up to and potentially contributing to this worldwide crisis that we're in. But first off, this weekend coming up, are you getting involved in any of the stand-up movements? Are you getting in your car and driving around? What are you going to be doing?
I'm going to be carpooling with somebody, and we're going to go up on the Wellington convoy to live in, and be meeting up there at the Firebird Cafe, a well-known freedom cafe, one of the few that actually stood up against the mandates, stood up against the mask mandates, and been doing it, been doing really well. They've become quite a freedom hub up in that area, from what I gather, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. Guy Nunn's going to be speaking, and I may say a few words as well. And
yes, I was just about to say that. That's Guy Nunn's little presentation. Well, not little, probably. The way that we've been promoted on, now we're on the mainstream media, thanks to News Hub. He may have more than a little presentation at this point, but let's hope, fingers crossed, that News Hub and all these social media outlets give us a break by doing these hit pieces on the weekend's operations with Operation Good Oil. So it sounds like a lot of fun. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be a great event. And hey, sort of the mainstream media wants to get in on it and promote it for us, then all good, all good indeed. And so I'm kind of happy about that.
Yeah. As we say in the South, I'm actually from South Auckland. I'm from the hood. We say mainstream media, it's all good in the hood. So this weekend is actually a big weekend coming up. And we've got the Independence Day. What are we in July now, right? July 4th is Independence Day. And surprisingly, I did some sort of research on Independence Day and what it really means. And lo and behold, I discovered that they're firing up the CERN beast. The Large Hadron Collider is being fired up on the 5th of July. They're starting off with one of their satanic rituals on the 3rd of July. It's amazing, really, what these guys are getting away with. So I would say that on the 5th of July, they're going to use, in one event, they're going to use the entire energy requirements for the USA for 1 year. And they're going to use that amount of energy in one day. Can you believe it?
That's just insane. And particularly at a time where we happen to be having an energy crisis as it is, where's that all coming from? Coal-fired?
Maybe they're going to have somebody sitting on a bicycle, pedaling it out. So in the midst of an energy crisis, it's completely ironic. Like, as you pointed out, like we're in the middle of an energy crisis, and here they are blasting an entire year's worth of energy supply, electricity supply, into the Large Hadron Collider, and it's equivalent to what they would use in 1 year in the US. So this is completely off the charts and nuts. And if people haven't figured out by now something is severely wrong with this world at the moment, then I guess they'll never really figure it out. What do you think?
It's sort of a beguiles belief. One that these are supposed to be sort of the preeminent scientific institution that's driving this. And yet they're going to have this satanic cult ritual for its opening. That I find that a little bit bizarre. Sort of what's that got to do with science? And then to turn around and say, well, we're going to blow all these resources, at this time when we've got a supposed huge energy crisis. It just strikes me as off the wall mad.
It defies common sense. It defies all logic. And see, the thing is, they literally do have these rituals. They've been found to promote these rituals in their own introduction videos to CERN, and they've got that gigantic Shiva statue, and they've been caught. Although I tend to think that little ritual that was caught by someone standing up on like the third or the fourth floor, and they did a mock sacrifice in front of Shiva. I tend to think that was probably a set up to to get the conspiracy theorists all excited and talking about it, because I'm pretty sure sometimes they do things like that just to put us on the wrong track. Have you seen the actual introduction video for CERN?
I've seen a couple of their things. Not really much interested, to be honest. It just strikes me as not being sort of anywhere, sort of near the sort of thing you'd expect from a science institution.
Well, science is magic. Science is magic, after all. Ain't that the truth? All right, let's get into it. Alchemy was the original sorcery. So that says a lot. Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's very interesting the way it's presented to us. But I digress. Off the topic today. All right, let's take a look here at Shell. Now, Shell's up to no good at the moment. Let me transition out of that. Shell's up to no good at the moment. What do you know about the situation with the Shell cancelling their deliveries in the past week?
Initially, I thought, well, what the hell? Sort of Shell fuel company. What's happening is with deliveries from a specific gas platform. I believe it's north of Australia, which has had some troubles already this year, where they were shut down for 4 months because of safety issues. Now there's a workers' dispute on the platform, and Shell's for a few thousand or tens of thousands of dollars dispute over wages. They're losing sort of millions of dollars worth of potential fuel being shipped out. It plays a little bit into the thing. What it actually is the LNG plant, LNG supply, which is either for Australia or for Japan. I'm not sure the context of that. It does mean that there is that will also impact on some of the condensate which is being used to produce fuel for vehicles. I don't think it's a huge impact, but it just raises the spectre that sort of what else is going on in the industry, in the oil and gas industry, and what is being potentially planned, in terms of transport failures. At the moment, the cost of shipping around the world is astronomical, particularly for us where we're far away from the world. And you got to remember too, New Zealand is water enclosed country, which is far away from our trading partners. Sort of all our goods, international export goods, are being sent via the sea.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was important to note this article because I've seen it already trending around the internet, on Facebook and on Telegram, and I don't do Insta and I don't do Twitter, but I know that this could be like really taken out of context and people could start panicking, and especially in the freedom movement or the truth movement, they could get this wrong very easily and start going, oh, Shell, the oil company, is cancelling all the gasoline in New Zealand and now we're in big trouble. So for context, let's go to the video and take a quick look at the video. It's not very long, so people can get an idea of exactly what is going on here.
You've just laid out the extraordinary consequences, these $120 million shipments over wages disputes, which I imagine are only worth about a few $100,000 or tens of thousands of dollars. It does seem to me that there must be something else at play here. Is this an example of a company gaming the system?
I think there's one or two things that are playing out here. Either that is an extremist industrial relations approach running through Shell's management, or this is potentially trying to cover up some other problems with the facility. Time will tell which one is correct, but our strong message to Shell is that we have been ready to sit down and negotiate in good faith the entire time. Escalating this in the time of a global crisis with scarce supply of gas is not only going to damage the brand of Shell, but it's going to hurt so many workers around the world. We just want to sit down and get a fair deal. What we are asking for is not to set Shell above industry standards. We want Shell to come up to the industry standard. That is, that workers working in extraordinarily precarious environments in offshore oil and gas platforms are paid a reasonable and fair amount equal to one another. Now, they are resisting this. They've been resisting this since we started in June 2020, and we find ourselves here today staring down the barrel of potentially a very messy industrial dispute.
You mentioned, this is a wage dispute, but there have been other problems at this plant. The Prelude plant was offline for 4 months earlier this year due to safety concerns. Now, a couple of months later, it's a wages dispute. Do you know if some of those safety concerns are still persisting and they'd rather go down the path of saying this is a wages dispute rather than admit that there's still problems there?
To be honest with you, Laura, I'm 50-50 on it at the moment. To me, it seems a little bit odd that, in fact, each spot cargo, I would probably say, is a little bit north of $120 million. Right now, gas is trading at plus or minus $37 a gigajoule. So for every single ship that gets cancelled as a consequence of Shell's actions, it's probably around $150 million. Now, for me, in all of my time in hundreds and hundreds of negotiations, I've struggled to see a decision where there's been a claim so high, so risk-averse for a business that they would be prepared to throw away $150 million at a time. It doesn't make a great deal of sense for us. This platform has been a big issue for Shell. This facility, this gas facility, has been a very, very big issue for Shell for a long period of time. The regulator shut it down for 4 months as a consequence of safety concerns, and safety is near and dear to our members and to all of the workers in the oil and gas industry. So safety comes absolutely first. It is paramount, but it's hard to understand and it's hard to explain the actions and what we're seeing playing out at the moment. I do hope that sensible and cooler heads prevail, that we get back to the table, that senior people within Shell are heeding these concerns and that they're stepping forward to say, let's find a sensible outcome here that doesn't damage their workforce, doesn't damage their brand, and certainly does not punish our allies in Europe and in the Ukraine who are already up against it, against Vladimir Putin and Russia, who are cutting off their gas supply.
Vladimir Putin in Russia is cutting off the gas supply. Really? I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Apparently, that's a story from a couple of weeks ago. They were having trouble with the Nord Stream 1 gas line, and that is a consequence of the supply chain issues that have been created by the sanctions against Russia. So Russia couldn't get the parts in order to fix the pipeline.
I recall reading that story. Yes, that's right.
And it's kind of like, well, okay, then it became unsafe for them to continue supplying gas. So they first cut down the amount of gas going to Germany, and then later on they also had cut off gas going to Italy, I think. As well.
Yeah, it was a part. I do recall the story. There was a part that was I can't remember if it was Canada had something to do with this, right? This is Canada.
Yeah, I think the parts were coming from Canada.
Right. So the part was fixed, but because of the sanctions on Russia, they were unable to ship it. Apparently, the part is a Russian part, which is fixed in Canada, and because of the sanctions on Russia, they were not able to send the part to Germany to fix up their pipeline. I think that was the issue, right?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
But it seems that there's more systemic issues potentially with the delivery end of that pipeline as well, in multiple locations. And at a troublesome time. But then again, Russia seems to be continuing and doing very well with its oil trading with China and with India. They seem to have no problem getting, selling their oil, and being paid in rubles.
Yeah, being paid in rubles and loving it. And the economy in Russia is extremely robust. They're doing really well. The US came up with 50 nations that are going to send weapons to Russia. So Joe Biden wanting to extend the war into mutual annihilation, it looks like. That's what they call it. Russia and China hold their nuclear warheads as a peace security measure, and it's called mutual annihilation. So, if anyone hasn't figured out that we're back in around 1920, maybe even a little bit later than that, we're into the 1930s now, we're into the Great Depression coming up and heading up to the big one. So only mass communications could actually turn this thing around, and a huge round of awakening on people to stand up and take their governments to task and stop being so silly. Because all of this is really stupid. What they're doing right now is poking the bear. With this energy thing, they're just first they severed the bear. That didn't do much. So they shut down all the pipelines. Then now let's blow up the pipelines. Poking it with their finger. Well, the bear's not reacting. Then finally they got a great big club, smacked it over their head and said, okay, we're not delivering any petrol. $150 million worth of petrol is pretty dramatic, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. And, the irony is that the world over is seeing the pain from it. At least in the West. sort of in the east, and India, China, sort of it's like business as usual, more or less. But there are other things that are playing into this, the climate change thing. I was reading today, yesterday and today, that in the Netherlands you've got the farmers protesting a 30% cut in the number of farms, and sort of they seem to do very well at protesting.
Oh, they've done fantastically well.
Those Dutchers.
Yeah.
Sort of dumping manure on the town hall, on the front door of the town hall, and spraying cow shit over it as well.
Yeah, and they're dropping hay bales on the highways.
Yeah, hay bales so huge that that a half a dozen police can't move them.
I'd love to be in Netherlands right now and having a fly on the wall view of what's going on there. Actually, it'd be great. And but this is what really needs to happen, to be honest, because a lot of the populations of these countries that are being affected are so apathetic, and I always want to say, well, it's not their fault because they're consumed, they're controlled by the system. But then again, guys like you, guys like me, okay, at least we figured it out. You don't.
I'm actually, both my parents were Dutch, are Dutch, and so I kind of understand a little bit more about the nature of Dutch people, so and they can be particularly blunt, at times, and often speak their mind, with not so much love. So sort of when something gets under their skin, there's going to be hell to pay.
Oh yes,
You can pretty well guarantee that, and they're standing up. The farmers are standing up and absolutely causing hell and disruption where they can, and so they should.
I think it's fantastic.
The other thing is, of course, this plays into the whole food shortages. That are an engineered situation. And I think New Zealand's situation is being engineered exactly for food shortages as well. We're going to have. Actually, I heard also just the other day, can't confirm, but somebody was saying that even just up in Kapiti, some of the veggie growers have been told that the regional council won't grant them permission to grow their usual crops. And it's going, grow them anyway.
Yeah, just
what are you
grow
doing
them.
what are you doing asking the council for permission to plant broccoli and lettuce and cabbage and
Yes.
that's just insane.
Yes.
Tell them to get knotted.
Yeah. Get knotted. Get in there. Pick up your spades or fire up your machines and just
claim
do
a
it.
load of your title on your farms and simply say you have no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We're not employees of the Crown Corporation. We are living men and women, and we will do what we feel is needed to be done for us to sustain ourselves.
That's right. So
and if that's growing crops and selling them, and if we can't sell them through the supermarket chains, then we'll start selling them direct.
Absolutely. Well, you shouldn't even be selling them through the supermarket chains. You should be selling them direct right from day one. I'm very fortunate. I live in a country area, and we just go up the road, and there's a greengrocer there. He's a farmer, and he sticks out a table. Remember when I don't know if you had this when you were young in New Zealand, but we had it when I was growing up. I grew up in Mangere, of all places, and there was a long drive that heads towards Papatoe, and along that long street there was a Chinese greengrocer, and that's where we quite often, when we were young, we'd jump in the car, go up there, and that's where we pick up all our veggies straight from the farm, you know.
Yeah.
Admittedly, that area is kind of like back in the day was quite rural because that's where the airport was. So there was a lot of sort of farming around that area.
Around
yeah.
I recall that.
Yeah. Now that they've got that big highway, they just completely avoid it. But that's the point. And go ahead.
A lot of that farming area is now also being built out as well. You know, with the industrial parks and their big hotels and stuff near the airport. It's kind of sad in some respects. It's centralisation. And I don't think that centralisation on that scale really works. You lose touch with your food supply. And, when there's a crisis, when there's no fuel to be able to get in your car and go down to the greengrocer or supermarket or out into the country to the local farm to a nearby farm to buy raw milk. Though that's harder to get now. Thanks to the overbearing government. It's like, well, okay, what's happening? I remember, and actually we still see it when we go up Kapiti, but it has significantly reduced. It used to be that all the way up Kapiti, there were all these places that were you could go and stop. You could stop in and buy your veggies and get much better prices in the supermarkets. But it's
way better. And one of the things about the supermarket products is that the farmers have to follow a regime of using all these chemicals in order to get there. And they're throwing away a lot of food, really. They're really throwing away a lot of food because they've got to look all uniform and perfect. Like there was a documentary comparing the UK and parts of Europe, I think it was Spain. And you go into a supermarket in Spain and all the tomatoes look different. But you go into a supermarket in the UK, and even New Zealand now, they all look uniform. They all look exactly the same, which nature doesn't create like that. And so they're all genetically modified, and they're using chemicals to keep all the bugs off them. So I would avoid the supermarket like the plague. And I actually was working in the grocery department for Woolies for 7 years as a grocery department manager and shift manager. So I spent a lot of time, and my father was a dairy owner for 8 years as well. So we have a lot of, I have a lot of love and memory with the food industry. But I digress. Let's get back to what does this shell scenario mean for New Zealand at least? Let's look at how it will affect New Zealand. Will it have a great effect, or is it not such a big? Is it a storm in a teacup? What do you think?
In itself, it doesn't have any direct effects on New Zealand. We're talking about LNG gas, which is being supplied to either Australia or I think Japan. Japan moved away from nuclear power and have gone entirely to LNG powered power stations since the Fukushima earthquake and the consequent nuclear meltdown that they had. So presumably somebody's missing out on their gas supply, and that's going to increase the costs sort of in a region for sure for natural gas. That won't affect New Zealand directly, but there is knock-on implications of is this really just a industrial dispute, or is there more to it? Is it part of a something that's going to sort of ricochet across the wider oil and gas industry? And that's unseen, but it does show that there is you've got a couple of big players, and it only takes one of those big players to fall over. It only takes a refinery to have a accident, and or in Russia's case, have a pipeline blown up. A refinery taken out partially or fully. And suddenly, sort of, the supply of fuel becomes a bigger issue.
Well, you know that there was a very large pipeline. I think it was Australia. I think it was one of Russia's largest pipelines that exploded. You heard about that one, right?
Yeah. That and also one of the Chinese refineries had a massive explosion and fire.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Was it in Shanghai? Was it around Shanghai?
Yeah.
Somewhere around that area? Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. I actually failed to mention that the other day when I was talking about this, but yeah, later on I realised I'd forgot to mention that.
These things are all playing into into creating that perfect scenario for if you wanted a mass depopulation event to occur. Sort of create a situation. Problem, reaction, solution.
Can I ask, are you living in the suburbs or are you out in the country?
In the suburbs, in Lower Hutt. Though we're relatively close. We're probably 10 or 15 minutes drive from sort of the open grass and paddocks.
Yeah, I made a strong point of moving away from the beach, although the beach was quite nice. But I made a strong point this year to move into the country and stay out of suburban areas in terms of living, get a bit of extra land. Like, we don't have a big piece of land, but it's enough for the dogs to run around in. And if I want to, I've got a big space out the back that I could put up in aquaponics, because that's what I'm planning to do this summer, is to start a small aquaponics project and start to get a bit more self-sufficient. We have groundwater here. But yeah, I think if people are still sitting idly and thinking that all of this is just going to smooth over and we're all going back to the footy season, well, they will run it for a certain amount of time, but it's going to really be painful for a lot of people. And really, the only people that are going to survive this are either prepared or really well-to-do.
We're looking at what we can do to prepare. There is going to be fuel shortages and food shortages before we get to the end of the winter and spring. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen to an extent at least. The cost of fuel is having an impact, and as a consequence, one of the things that we are blessed with, at least, is we've got a decent-sized backyard, and a decent garden growing area already established. It needs a little bit more attention, but it's there. It's got very fertile soil, and with a bit of effort, it will produce well for us.
Well, good luck on you. Yeah, I've got. Although here we're not feeling it. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, like I'm in this orb of like everything's kind of fine, and like literally the government's not showing any sign of this sort of narcissism or insanity, and everything's just moving along, and the supply chain is strong and good, and there's a very small increase in petrol, very small, very, very minute, that it's not even worth anything to write home about. But in conclusion to the article that we saw on Sky News, this has very little to do with Marsden Point and to do with the energy petrol supply chain in New Zealand. So if people are out there and freaking out thinking, oh my God, Shell New Zealand. And you mentioned that Shell was bought out by Z, and then Z was sold off to Ampol. So apparently, as you said earlier to me, that Shell's not even trading here, really. So it really won't affect New Zealand. So people in the truth movement and freedom movement, don't freak out, and don't spread it around as shock value news, I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, go ahead. Go ahead. Final statements. Let's go ahead.
I'm not concerned about that at all. I think we've got bigger issues with things like Marsden Point and what's being done with it. And we need to keep heat on the issue, keep trying to find solutions, keep trying to figure out how we're going to get the refinery owners to reconsider their position, and particularly in light of the fact that we have refining margins are better than they have been in many years. They're making an absolute killing.
Well, they're making a killing. During OPEC, I think during, really quickly, hey, buddy. Oh, you're so cute. Well, that's great.
James.
That's great, James. Hi, James. Let me put you in a double headshot. Hi, James. How you going there, buddy? Yeah, nice to meet you, James. My neighbor just started a chainsaw, so it's probably a good time for us to get out of town.
All right.
But, I'll cancel what I was going to say, and we're out of time today. Thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us. Have a great weekend. It turns out that I'm probably going to be available this weekend, so hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be able to cross over live to some of these events. So I'm really chuffed about that. That suddenly, nature, destiny, gave me a weekend off, which is awesome. Hopefully, it's going to stay that way, and we can get it done. So you're on the Energy Report on State of the Nation. You're with Daniel Lambert Reurich, and I'm Jason Bainbridge, and we'll see you again real soon. Goodbye.